Okay. Hi, guys. Welcome to all our Galactic Seeds brothers and sisters. Today we have a special guest, Dan Willis, who is a researcher and direct disciple of Marcel Vogel. Um, hi, Dan. How are you?
I'm good, Marko.
Cool. Can you just more in detail introduce yourself? What is your field of research right now, and how you got into the healing and the work with Marcel Vogel?
Oh, it was a long time ago, Marko. Had an unusual experience back in 1977 with a interaction with a being, let's say, that conveyed the concept of geometry and consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of goes into a long, a long thing, but the being conveyed ideas that I had not was not familiar with at all. I wasn't didn't know what sacred geometry was and everything, and the being projected a sphere in space, and as I noticed, there was one geometry fit into another. Uh, tetrahedron, hexahedron, isosahedron, the dodecahedron. I didn't even know what platonic solids and everything. It left a burning desire to try to understand what this was all about.
Mm-hmm.
So I traveled to, I heard of Dr. Vogel's work, and there's obvious connection between geometry and consciousness.
Yes.
And one of the in order to understand the matrix that we are in, what is the relationship of this relationship between geometry and consciousness? It seems that both quartz crystals and water appear to have universally resonant qualities to them, to the energies of mind,
Mm-hmm.
which they both, have tetrahedral and hexagonal geometries. And so, these clear stones that have been used similarly by cultures, across vast expanses of time on different continents, that in different cultures using them in similar ways means that this is science of the future that has not been fully, realized or brought into instrumentation.
Yeah, in my
So,
opinion, this needs just to be refreshed. We already knew that. You mentioned the older civilizations, and apparently I was listening to Dr. Vogel's all lectures, and some of them are from Munich, some of them are from Denmark. He explained that quartz vibrates on 454, which is the code of the water exactly. Can you elaborate more on that?
yes, yes. Well, we're our bodies, as everybody's aware, is made mostly up of water. When they dug these deep ice core samples in Antarctica, they found that every single major class of crystallography in the seven major classes was manifested in the water, meaning that water has this quality to be universally resonant to all geometries. In the laboratory, now Marcel worked, just a really brief, we only have an hour, so I'm just going to try to summate it as much as I can. Marcel originally had to do a course of creativity for the engineers at IBM. He was a head scientist. He worked there for 26 years. He had over 140 patents. He's the one that
Wow.
developed the hard drive coding that people used for hard drives. The red and blue phosphors for televisions, liquid crystals. He had all these. He's an incredible genius, and
Mm.
so he had the kind of mind that once something he couldn't answer, he would not stop in researching it. And so he had to do this course for these engineers, about 30 of them.
Mm-hmm.
And he read this article by Cleve Baxter on plant communication. He was a CIA polygraph expert that would hook up a plant, and a person would walk in and would trash the plants around, and then the person would walk out, and other people would walk in, and the plant wouldn't respond to the script chart recorder, one of those squiggly needles. And then when that one person that walked back in that trashed the plants in, the plants would squiggle. And he thought, oh, he just thought this was garbage. And he crumpled it up and threw it in the trash. And then he thought, no, this would be a good thing for the engineers. I think this is a good creativity course. So he hooked up a split leaf philodendron in his laboratory. And he hooked up the script chart recorder. It has a paper rolling and it has a little needle going, squiggling, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he went to burn the leaf on the plant, and the chart squiggled. And he got a reaction from the plant. And then as soon as the thought formed in his mind to do it again, as soon as the thought formed, the script chart squiggled. He said that
Wow.
squiggle changed his life. He then was able to do it on the other side of the laboratory, and then he did it from 7 miles away, and was able to tune into the plant mentally, and cause the plant to squiggle.
With or without crystal?
Pardon?
You told he was able to mentally connect with the plant 7 miles away, like
Yeah.
with or without crystal.
Oh, this was before crystals. This is what led into crystals.
Okay.
Then he went to Prague, Czechoslovakia, and he was able to tune into the plant and make it squiggle, showing the inverse square law of distance, that we're used to with electromagnetic waves and everything like that. Doesn't apply to the energies of mind. It's instantaneous. What he found was he started working with it more and more, and he developed a breathing technique. He studied pranayama yoga, and he found that when he pulsed his breath, he got a much greater reaction from the plant. And he was doing a lecture in Los Angeles, and this lady said, "Oh, here is this crystal has an energy," and he thought, "Oh, this is woo-woo stuff. I don't want to have anything to do with it." And then he realized that the crystal, when he was working at IBM, a colleague of his had a back problem, and he was able to use the crystal on him, and it alleviated the problem. And so that led him. I'm making a very long story short. That led him into the work with crystals. When I went up to see him, I heard about his work with the research. He was still working for IBM. I went up to see him in the middle of a storm up in San Jose. And I knocked on the door. He welcomed me in, and I sat down on this couch with this other doctor. He was working with a number of medical doctors in the San Francisco Bay Area, teaching them how to use crystals for healing. And he turned off all the lights, and we listened to some classical music for about, it seemed like a half an hour. And I said, I'm fascinated about your work. I want to find out more, And a knock came on the door. A woman had heard that he was working with doctors and working with healing, and her daughter, who she brought, had this tumor that was protruding about a half an inch off of her ankle. As I sat with the doctor on the couch, Dr. Vogel used the crystal, and using the breath and his technique that he used, the doctor and I visually witnessed physical dematerialization of the half-inch tumor that was protruding. It like
Wow.
disappeared, and that left quite an impression on me. Um,
Yeah, I mean, how wouldn't? You know, in front of your eyes, like tumor dematerializes. Like, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
it's phenomenal. Yeah, he used L rods. I wanted to ask you about that because I knew, like, for example, the friends of my grandfather, they would be able to use the branch and locate the water below the ground. In a healing, I'm using the bobber. Sometimes I use pendulum. So, is there just electromagnetic wave communication among all living beings, or it is something more, something above that? I'm asking
uh,
you this as a scientist.
nothing is as science is learning. Everything is interconnected. There is nothing that's um, not connected. We live in a holographic type of reality, and what proved it was one of the projects I worked with him on was in the 1950s was a camera called the Delaware camera.
Hmm.
This camera was a radionic camera that could take a drop of blood or a hair or something acting as a witness, and be able to tune into that and take a photograph of that person or that aspect of the person. And not this, I've worked with different types of radionic equipment, but this one was different. It had a time spiral. It could go backwards and forwards in the time. It was patented by
Wow.
the European Patent Office, and tens of thousands of photographs were made. On my notes on marcelvogel.org, you can see a photograph of a fetus, that he was able to tune into the mother about, not Dr. Vogel, but Delaware, about 50 miles away, and be able to move the time spiral forward and be able to see different levels of gestation of the fetus in the mother. It was what this proves is that if you take a drop of blood or an aspect of a person, it's like a holofractal representation of that person, no matter where they are in the universe, and that there is a element of time that can move backwards and forwards in that. Anyway, it's this is what we were working with back in the early 1980s. Um, is technology that is archaic compared to, you can imagine areas of advanced science that are in, secret laboratories that have been, developed for some time that are way in advance of this. But these were kind of like the forerunners of this
Mm.
very advanced technology.
Yeah, yeah. The guys like Marcel and Nikola Tesla before him. Because I currently live in Serbia and I'm a huge fan of Nikola Tesla.
I
Um,
am too.
yeah, in meditation, like he gave me a lot of ideas. And yeah, the guys like Marcel and Nikola Tesla, they're advancing. I think like what Marcel did, like in a scientific community, that will become a mainstream 50 or 60 years ago forward. Um, but like, was he able to advance you through the teaching into more spiritual refinement, update, and
Oh,
development in general?
oh, absolutely. A very loving, wonderful being. I traveled to the mines in Arkansas and got a whole, tons of crystals for him for setting up when we first started the laboratory. I was working at the Naval Electronic Engineering Center. I have a pretty good science background.
Mm.
So I helped him procure some of the laboratory equipment. He set up a full-on laboratory after when he retired from IBM and invited me to be a research associate.
Wow.
And I mean, he built an electron microscope from scratch. We had spectrophotometers. We had a full equipped laboratory, which we were able to quantify and measure these, woo woo type of technologies.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm really glad that you guys exist, because a lot of mainstream scientists who are like this, they just don't believe. They just discard it automatically. Like, oh, it's a, as you say, woo woo stuff. We don't believe in that. But like
yeah,
that can actually be quantified. You just need to have approach to have a higher state of consciousness. Like, you need to vibrate higher, and you need to have a proper equipment for it, right?
it really is about the core. The one thing that differentiated Marcel, who was a top scientist from other scientists, was his uh, understanding of the importance of love in the whole process. He always used to say, man is made in the image and likeness of God, therefore we create. All of us are creative. Our belief and intention, uh, you know, is important. When I got him those crystals, he, as a gift, he cut me one of the first healing crystals, and
Mm-hmm.
I was getting on the plane going back to San Diego, and there was a football player sitting next to me holding his knee in pain that he just had surgery on. And I thought, oh my God, I've been given a gift, and, this is obviously an opportunity to use it. And I told the football player, I said, look, I'm not a doctor or anything. I'm more of an experimental scientist. If you'd like, I could use some experimental techniques I've learned and see if we can remove the pain from your knee. And so I used the techniques that Marcel showed me, and we got off the plane, and the guy was meeting his parents, and he pointed at me, that guy, he fixed my leg. There's no pain in it. And it was like, you know, I'm not I don't consider myself so much as a healer as more of a researcher. Um,
Mm.
what I found interesting is there is a connection between water and quartz that I call angular harmonic resonance. And that is that water has a molecular bonding angle. I don't mean to get too technical here, but it's kind of interesting to understand the science that's going on, because Marcel was able to take a crystal with this winery, and they had this horrible rot gut wine that it was terrible. Anyway, he was able to take the finishing essence of a more mature wine
Mm-hmm.
and take the rot gut wine and and had 7 turns around a spiral, which can induce this information program into the wine. In other
Mm.
words, from the quartz went into the water that's in the wine and transformed it. And it transformed thousands of gallons into a California award-winning wine. Um,
Wow.
and how this happens is what we discovered in the laboratory is that water has an intermolecular bonding angle of multiples of the 52-degree angle that's in quartz. When quartz crystals grow, the angle,
Yeah, it's actually 51, 51.
yeah,
51 degrees,
exactly,
51 minutes. Yeah.
exactly, and 14 seconds. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Like it is just a coincidence correlating with the Pyramid of Giza. It's a just coincidence,
Well,
you know.
the fact that the Pyramid of Giza is the mathematics of the 52-degree angle happens to be that of phi, the golden mean ratio, which is
Mm.
the only ratio that goes into infinity. Um, it happens to be the same angle that that quartz grows, and that's why one angle of the Vogel crystal is cut to the 52-degree angle because it's the uh, universal angle. But anyway, getting back to how water and quartz are able to transfer the information between each other is that the 52-degree angle in water is half of that at 26 degrees,
Mm-hmm.
and at 104.5 is the two angles in water. And what happens is the people who understand electromagnetics and science, they understand that when you have harmonics, you have information of those harmonic signals. Let's say you transmit on 3 megahertz, for example. You're
Mm.
going to have a frequency at 6 megahertz. You're going to have one at 9 megahertz. You're going to have harmonic multiples, and you're able to have that information that's on the original frequency transferred to those other harmonics. And so, with the angular harmonic resonance, you're having transfer of information based on harmonics of angles from one substance of the quartz to that of H2O water.
Is it a principle of multiplication? I know the Tesla code is 369. Is that principle?
Well, it fits in there. Yeah, the 369 is yeah, it gets into a interesting discussion. But basically uh, basically, as we are familiar with radio antennas that are, you have a short wave antenna and a long wave antenna.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like, and they are at multiples of each other. You will transfer information, and that's how the quartz transfers information into the water.
Wow. Yeah, it was interesting. By the way, what is your formal training? I'm a master psychologist, and I'm a psychotherapist as well. What is your background?
My background is mostly technical. I was a broadcast engineer for many years, working on the most powerful FM station on the West Coast. And then
Mm-hmm.
for about a decade and a half, I worked with the government on all their electronic satellite communications and a lot of stuff. I uh, oh, I've done different things. I've had a computer business. I was an alternative vehicle manufacturer. I was
So
then
like
in
electronic engineer.
yeah, yeah, and the other hat I wear in all this is when I was in the military, I had a high-level top secret security clearance and was taking messages from ships reporting extraterrestrial craft coming out of the oceans. And then 2001, the largest event in the history of the National Press Club in Washington, D.C., I joined 20 witnesses before all the mainstream media of the world to testify that the extraterrestrial presence is here, bases on the other side of the moon. We have zero-point energy technology that can get off of nuclear oil and coal. Presidents, CIA directors are being denied access into these illegal, unacknowledged access programs that are working on extraterrestrial reverse engineering. Bases on the other side of the moon, 57 different species already categorized. All this happened back on May 9th, 2001, 19 years ago. Of course, the mainstream media. I used to be an ABC newsman also.
Oh,
A-
interesting.
And, I took note that the mainstream media effectively sanitized it by using what's called a limited hangout. In other words, they said, oh, they want to have a congressional hearing on the reality of UFOs,
Mm.
completely disregarding the fact that all these indications show that we have an illegal infiltration into our government operations. But anyway, that's another subject for another show,
Yeah,
maybe.
why I asked you that? Because I know you guys from kind of more natural sciences and technical sciences, you're really good methodologically trained into experimental methodology. Like in psychology, uh, because psychology is changing these days, especially in a methodological scientific sense, they tend to get um, more statistical approach. But the essence of psychology, how psychology started, and how psychology advanced the most is from experiment as a method. So um, I think that all these new age guys and healers, not judging anyone, but I just think like good healer is a good scientist as well. Like there is a good interconnection between each other, and the experimental method is enabling the soul and the whole being to advance, and that's what Marcel did. So can you add, can you elaborate on that?
Oh,
Are
you're
there any other characteristic that healer or therapist can possess um, in order to advance faster and more effectively?
Oh, good question, Marco. Yeah, I believe balance needs to happen between left brain, right brain, type of thing, and the heart as well. Um, all of this when you in the procedures of healing, when you're helping somebody else, you're basically facilitating the other person to heal themselves, essentially.
Mm,
Uh, you're when you you always must you must have a person's consent, obviously,
okay.
um, and just your intention to help somebody is a powerful thing. And also, the more you do it, as I'm sure you're aware, as you're doing a lot of healing practice, the more you get feedback that, what it worked, and then the more you did, it worked again, and then as you find that you believe in yourself and you believe in the ability, it increases and magnifies, of course, because everything is hinged around belief
Mm,
and suggestion. Because the fact is, because we are all creative beings, we're recreating ourselves every nanosecond of this experience. We're continually cre- recreating ourselves. When we're working with someone to heal, you have to come of the understanding that the 3D physical body is basically a holographic projection of of our higher self, a higher dimensional being, our our higher self. That's the best way I could say it.
exactly.
And then it comes down into different harmonics. The higher recreates the lower, but the lower reflects but does not create the higher. And so
Wow. Yeah.
what what
This is phenomenal. Yeah. This is genially told. Yeah.
And so what happens with the crystal, as Marcel used to call it, a multidimensional transducer. Basically, it creates a bridge between, because of the geometrical nature of the quartz, in alignment with the matrix of consciousness that we are in. It acts as somewhat of a bridge, and the breath is highly important in this whole process, because as you inhale and exhale, it's not just merely moving oxygen in and carbon dioxide out. It's more it's more of a information transfer that's happening. When you inhale, you're
Mm,
drawing in according to your thoughts and your belief, energy into your body. And when you exhale, you're releasing
Expanding.
energy. And yes, yes. And so when in the healing work, when you go in, there's a whole, if people go to marcelvogel.org, there's a whole lot of papers on there, PDFs, and it goes into a lot of detail, but I will summate it in
Hmm.
what I learned from Marcel, and that is first you must connect with the crystal itself. In other words, so the crystal becomes an extension of yourself. You begin to a lot of what he everybody does their own little, I guess, variations of the technique, but he rotated in his hand and he developed a charge. You can feel the charge happen on the surface of the crystal. Yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, and as you go into a person, let's say the person has a shoulder injury, okay? Something happened or whatever. As you go in to the body, use your left hand as kind of like a feedback mechanism, and your right hand is more of a projectant.
Mm,
And as you rotate the crystal, Marcel used to call it the critical rotational angle, at a like almost like tuning a dial on a radio on the right frequency. You would turn in, and you could feel, and when you locked into that person's energetic field, you'll feel it. And then
mm,
what happens is he starts to, you know, circular rotate the crystal into the area, feeding an energy into it.
mm.
And the person would have to, it can't be a low energy. A person has to have some energy. So usually what happens is some deep breathing exercises first. They bring the energy up of
So they
of the
can be
person.
more receptive and conductive. Yeah, very important.
Oh, they have to be very participative in this. So what you do is you facilitate them healing themselves using the breath by going in and amplifying. And what you do is you ask the individual to ask within to be shown the root core cause of whatever the pain is. In other words, use the pain as a guiding mechanism to show you what it's been said in the past. Ask and you shall receive, right? Um, when
Yeah.
you ask a question, no matter what it comes to you, it could be an emotion, it could be a geometrical pattern, a color, or whatever. When that comes to you, you lock your mind onto it, and then when the crystal is amplifying into that area, the crystal healer facilitates the I don't know, want to call him a patient. The participant. And so that when a person does a breath release, like that, like almost like a martial arts, how they go, hey,
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
Um, when they do that, amazing transformations occurred. It's like all of a sudden, oh my God, the pain is completely gone away. What happens is you pull the rug out from under the pattern that is caused is on the higher level of our higher self, we are perfect.
Mm,
But as we come into this 3D world, we can have distortions happen of that perfection pattern, obviously.
yeah.
Um, and so what you're doing is you're going in at a higher dimensional level, you could say, and pulling out the disrupting program. And what is important is to replace that program with love. Um, and on a universal, Marcel used to say, love is the glue of the universe that holds matter and form. When I love you, it allows you to be whole.
Yeah, that fifth dimension is holding the higher and lower dimension together.
Yeah, yeah. Love is what keeps us in form, basically.
Yeah, literally, like literally, physically and essentially, because 5D in spiritual alchemy, we are calling 5D the place of love, and in a scientific community, 4D is referred as a electric field, and 5D is referred as magnetic field. So yeah, you see how the alchemy and science did come together. But
Yeah.
the the most advanced scientist of all of our times, like Isaac Newton or Albert Einstein or Tesla, they call themselves alchemists. So yeah, they yeah. Um, yeah, just about one detail. You describe the whole process. So let's say this is the pain point, right? And I'm accessing. I hold breath here, and when I feel the stress, I will start to breathe out, and then breathe in, and then breathe out. Um, uh,
Yes.
the people with psychic abilities, they can see what's going on. Um, how you guys in the scientific communities, how you how you quantify that measured? Could you have any device that can confirm what's going on, like some imaging technique or something like that?
Sure. Well, with electron, with the spectrophotometer, for example, that I was able to get from a war surplus store, we got going. Um, we found that you take a little vial of water,
Mm-hmm.
and and you would measure the valence bands around the 4,000 angstrom area, and you would have certain bands. You take that vial of water and you pulse your breath with the intention, and the you can measure the bands would change. So there's a
Mm.
definite interaction of mind with the water. As Dr. Emoto was able to flash freeze and show the patterns of mind, being able to capture. Marcel was doing this way before Dr. Emoto, um, working with the not only water but also liquid crystals. He was able to take a sheet of liquid crystal and project a thought of well, he was Catholic, but I used to ask him, why are you into religion? It's like, oh, I like the fellowship and everything else. But anyway, anyway, he was able to project the Madonna. I'm pretty much universal. I like to keep universal with everything.
Mm.
Um, onto the liquid crystal sheet. You could actually see it. It was pretty amazing. There's on marcelvogel.org. You could actually see the
His
formation.
book in 9 chapters. Yeah. Uh, there are actually all the experiments described.
Yeah, it's sad. He like all great scientists, he passed away at some point. He passed away over about 30 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But he was setting the groundwork for the science of the future, because there's other advanced races out there. We see crop circles and things like that, which they communicate in a universal language of geometry.
Mm.
And when when science comes to the point where we understand the true nature of consciousness and how it is related to, Marcel, you would say that you know the energies of mind are geometric, And what we see in the world of crystallography, he would say is, what we see with that and the energies of mind is identical. And so
Mm.
it's a science of the future, understanding the relationship between, uh, our creative consciousness and that of these geometric patterns that we create with our mind.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's everywhere. Like look at the ruby crystal, like form these triangular formations, and then quartz you see hexagonal formations. Like it's a sacred geometry, and there are forms in which the source, somebody called the source, somebody called God, communicates with us in a three forms. That's geometry, light, and water. And what is together? What is the common element for it? Is the wave. So these three stuff, like in orthodox Christianity, we show like this, and that's how we pray. And nothing is accidental. Everything is interconnected. And
Yes.
Dan, I think we are living in a kind of very special point of time where the science will be able to prove consciousness. You know?
I believe that I've met with enough, you know, whistleblowers, witnesses, and stuff that have been in with these unacknowledged special access programs where they've taken in trillions of dollars over decades that have
Mm.
super advanced technologies that look like science fiction that have not been released to the world. In these projects, they have advanced, dramatically from what most people on this planet experience. But you mentioned about a ruby crystal. It brought to mind one of the things that Marcel worked with, besides the crystal skull, from British Honduras, was the crystal that came out of the Atlantean pyramid that Dr. Ray Brown, who I knew, got. Are you familiar with that story?
No, no. You can
Oh,
tell. You can share with us.
Oh, okay. Well, Dr. Ray Brown was actually treasure hunting off the coast of Bimini, in the Bermuda Triangle area, where a
Okay.
storm came, and he went down, and the storm had sifted the sand, and he went. There was this huge pyramid, larger than the Pyramid of Giza, and he
Wow.
went into this pyramid, and the rooms were like all lit up, like there was no source of light. And in this room, there was 7 chairs surrounding a pedestal with some hands that were holding a small crystal. And this
Wow.
crystal was about 3.5 inches diameter, about the size of a tennis ball.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a golden rod coming down from the ceiling of the pyramid, and it had a ruby type crystal pointing at, and the crystal looked like the area around it looked like intense energy or heat or something. He tried to, get some of the off the bar. He couldn't cut the bar, and so he took the crystal. Anyway, there's a long story to this, but I'll make this short. Um, and there were 7 chairs around this crystal, and one chair was higher, almost like one was the leader and the other one was, participating. And it appeared to be some type of focal point for the beings that were sitting around the crystal that were interfacing into this pyramid. And in other words, it was some ancient technology.
Was it
Um,
seven-sided pyramid or?
no, it was like the pyramid in Giza,
Uh-huh. Okay.
and it had a crystalline capstone.
Hmm.
Yeah, this is, you can look it up, Dr. Ray Brown. I took photos of the crystal. It's on marcelvogel.org.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and somebody after Dr. Ray Brown passed away, Marcel worked with that crystal, and incredible energy coming off of it. And there was like little pyramids inside this quartz crystal that was unusual. Anyway, the ancient uh, civilizations that have been on this planet understood the interface of consciousness and geometry, and uh, and so I just thought it was a remarkable find. Unfortunately, somebody who was the caretaker of it said they accidentally dropped it and it broke. But I don't believe that story. I believe there are certain elements on this planet that like to acquire all the ancient technologies.
Exactly, but that is gonna change, and that's why we are privileged to live in this point of time. We are seeing a lot of let's call them bad guys are just falling down. You know,
Yes.
their power decreased, and yeah, because a lot of people are waking up and they're using their abilities and knowledge and power on the right direction. And in the end of the day, that's just what it counts. Um, so, do you know about something about Marcel's galactic origin? Because you were mentioning about multidimensional realities, and we are multidimensional beings.
Yes.
Um, I am getting uh, when I get when I attune like to his teachings um, and energetically when I attune to his essence, I'm getting like he has a really strong connection with Lemuria. Um, are you aware of other elements of his galactic origin, his galactic background?
I wouldn't be surprised. He he was this really sweet, loving man. He always liked to get hugs. You give him a
Mhm.
big hug, and but what a mind. He was like once he had a mystery when he was like 13 years old. He was trying to figure out how fireflies glow, and he set up a whole laboratory when he was 13 years old. His dad helped him. He set up a laboratory, and then he was able to discover how the bioluminescence of fireflies glow. They were able to write. He started Vogel luminescence, and
Mm.
uh, IBM grabbed him up. Because he was an he was an incredible genius.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Maybe that scientific side came from Sirius B. I'm getting like, but his essence is Lemurian, so it is a great combination between like heart-centered and spirit-centered soul.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, very much
Mm.
heart centered. Very much the importance of love in all of this. And actually, the ET experience I had way back in 1977, that the being was saying that, I don't have any way of proving this or anything. It could have been just some high speed alien download or something. I had like a Kundalini experience, millions of volts going through my hands and feet while I was having this experience. And the
Mm.
being basically said that, we're can be conscious of the particular vibrational frequency geometry that we're on, and all of us are like within a perfect sphere, you could say, but not of the higher levels. And only through love we're able to um evolve, from one frequency geometry into the next. And I'm sure, my my ability to comprehend what was being shared was, quite limited.
Yeah, I mean, how I was introduced to sacred geometry is in 2000, back in 2016. Like I used to be really scientific because I had a really good method like scientific methodology training in a psychology studies. And then like I start doing psychotherapy. I started to develop my heart consciousness, my emotional side not just my intellectual side. And then, like in 2016, I already started doing Reiki, pranic healing, a bit of Vogel technology. And then, like this huge guy, like can you imagine, like scientific guy, like comes to sleep, and like a huge luminescent being, like higher than 4 meters, and he started throwing the stuff at him, like sacred geometry, like Metatron's cube, and I was like, ah, no, you know.
Oh my God.
And I was like, what the heck is this? And but good way I was guided. I just let go. I just let go of wanting to figure it out, and I just went to meditation. And the guy was really polite. He told me, okay, just calm down, Metatron. In Christianity, you know me as Enoch or Enoch, and I will be your mentor. I will guide you. I will show you the stuff. And from that day, I just constantly improving. And um, yeah, I'm really grateful for his help. And after it, I understood geometry, and I was really able to apply that in my life. Like even now, I'm using geometry. Like as you told, crystal has a lot of different functions. Um, as you said, it is a multi-dimensional conductor, but it also can reflect the sacred geometry. And I used to like I'm able to stop bleeding, let's say for 15 seconds, which is scientifically impossible. Like, can you imagine? I come to my physiology professor and say, "Hey, I can stop bleeding for 15 seconds." But it works.
You mean you cut your finger or something and stop the bleeding?
Yeah, yeah. I was on the tree, high up there on the branches, because in my neighborhood there are like old guys that they're not able to climb the trees, and I was like, okay, I'll do it. And I took the saw, I took to cut the
Uh
branch,
huh.
and I slipped my hand, and I cut myself here. And I was like, okay, like it was mentally in a second. Like I am like 6 or 7 meters on the branch. If I go downstairs, like I would die. Like literally, I would lose a lot of my blood. So I took the crystal from my pocket, and I just breathe in. I just did the invocation. uh, I asked God, please tell me what to do, because it was really urgent. And I just and just pulse my breath, stabilize with a blue light, and I saw, like, after a few seconds, like, oh wait, like it stopped. Like that completely changed my way of seeing my hands, of perceiving my hands. And like, and yeah, from that on, I didn't have doubts that this works. But sometimes the life and the occurrences will put you in those situations uh, to
To teach you.
experiment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. In a way, yeah. Misfortune bring opportunity.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well said. So by the end of this interview, Dan, the last question. Um, you mentioned the Marcel ascended 30 years before, and in which direction his teachings goes in the terms of crafting crystals, in terms of research, and in terms of healing. I know I did some updates on his teachings, and I'm showing that to my students. It is basically Lemurian alchemy, but technically based, and has foundations from Marcel. But yeah, I know about phi crystals. Can you say more about phi crystals and about more about
Yes, yes.
researchers who are having his path?
Well, remember I mentioned about he was able to heal one of his coworkers, and then he had a dream to cut the crystal in a bipyramidal on both
Hmm.
sides on that side. And what it was is to cohere the energies of mind because you have one side that's the feminine, you could say the 52-degree angle, the universal side, and you have the other side that's the projecting, which is the male, which is a more of acute angle. And between the two, it's like how a laser works. You have two mirrors, and the energy reflects back and forth and becomes thousands of times more powerful, able to cut through steel. The
Wow.
crystal, in a way, is able to cohere thought in a. Marcel always used to say, these energies are akin to those we know in regular physics. And me being a broadcast engineer, I know that you can take an antenna array, like let's say HARP up in Alaska, it's a phased array. A lot of communications use phased array where you have one antenna element repeated many times in the correct phasing relationship, and it has a great amplification. You have the same situation within the quartz crystal. You have a tetrahedral crystal lattice array that acts as kind of like this is how, in from what I have gathered, is how the crystal
Mm.
uh, amplifies the thought. Like to stop the bleeding or whatever. You're basically amplifying your intention uh, through that. It could be good or bad. It doesn't matter. The crystal's universal. But but whatever you do to others, you do to yourself. So, um,
Exactly. It will get back anyway. So yeah.
right, right. Yeah. So basically, the crystal acts as a kind of a laser for the mind in cohering the intention and thought and belief, uh, of the practitioner working through it.
Yeah. Cool. So mm, in field of research, like how it is going now, what topics are scientists taking?
I haven't. There's some people that branched off to try to, work, you know, based off of Marcel's research, but yeah, and nobody took it to the level that he did. Electron microscope and full-on laboratory, and some scientists. I don't have the qualifications of some of the other scientists that were working with him.
Hmm.
But I worked on the Delaware camera, which I thought was quite interesting with two other scientists. I discovered certain geometrical ratios of the tuning boxes that were inside that.
Mm.
Um, but what else to say? Let's see. Trying to think of other aspects. But it's such important work. It's basically the future science and understanding that. You know, um,
Exactly. As I was thinking, that's why I asked you, because I knew this guy, he's like 50 or 60 years ahead of his time. And I knew that like nobody reached that level of consciousness and understanding and scientific training, so they can conduct those experiments like by the structure. Like if you're reading the science paper, like the research, uh, it's really simple methodologically. It's simple, but the the ways of proving it and just the conducting of experiment is just amazing. The idea, it like vibrates so high that it is way above uh, like most of the population even right now. So yeah, I just hope you guys will be guided by source to continue conducting those experiments and make for us technologies so we can so healers and galactic seeds and way showers they can they can be even more powerful with it.
Oh. It's all about love and raising the consciousness, because when you increase that frequency, you're more at the fundamental, the fundamental resonance. It's Marcel was perfectly adapted for this. Being a scientist that had to do with memory. That's what he
Mm-hmm.
worked with was the magnetic coatings, how the computers have memory and things like that. And then what he evolved into, he used to say records are written in stone. In other words, everything records, as you're well aware.
And in the
Everything,
bones, yeah, he was telling
yeah,
about bones
yeah.
a lot.
Exactly, as a piezoelectric quality, metals and crystals, they have more of a permeability than plastics and
Mm,
wood and that type of thing to hold the charge. But everything that you touch, everything you come in contact with, everywhere you go, you're recording. Everything is recorded.
mm,
In other words, our energy fields imprint on the area around us. Yeah, as
great.
psychics using psychometry, can grab your keys, and they can, as one did with me one time, and could accurately describe what was going on in my apartment just by, you know, holding on the keys. You can everything is holding information.
Mm, yeah, yeah, exactly. So, how our viewers can reach up to you? Do you have any website or something?
Yeah, my notes were working with Marcel, and I'm not a professional site or anything. It just I wanted to do a mind dump of everything I've learned. Uh, and then over the decades, I started to discover that everything that being showed me is all true. The entire universe is fractal and it's geometric, and the planets, the universe, everything. Marcel Vogel. Marcel Vogel is spelled Vogel.org. And then on my involvement with the extraterrestrial issue is thewebmatrix.net.
Mm-hmm.
And either one of those, can reach me on Facebook. I'm on facebook.com/disclosure witness, because that's what I talk about a lot because, being an ex-ABC newsman, our planet's been technologically hijacked, and we need to release these advanced technologies for the good of
Wow,
everyone.
wow. Yeah, this was amazing, Dan. Thank you very much. And yeah, I hope we can have a perhaps another opportunity in very close future to have another part of interview. And see you.
And I would look forward to that, Marco. Very much a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye bye.